I'm Dr. Blanche Grube. Today I'd like to talk to you about nutrition. Yes, I could spend hours talking about nutrition, but I think it can be all summarized in about 10 to 15 minutes. It's really quite simple. And prior to 1950, we probably wouldn't be having this discussion at all, because nutrition was nutrition back then. In other words, prior to 1950, about 1950, people ate food that was wholesome. They ate whole, fresh meat. As a matter of fact, many people didn't even have freezers. So if a woman was going to prepare, or a man, we have to be politically correct these days. If a woman or a man was going to prepare dinner, they actually had to go to the butcher and get fresh meat for dinner that day. People didn't have freezers, and if they did have a freezer, I remember when I was a kid, our freezer was only this big, and it had a large chunk of ice on the top of the freezer, and the iceman would come every couple of days, take that piece that was left out and put a nice fresh chunk of ice in there. That's where the name icebox came from. So before that happened, people didn't have freezers. They didn't keep meat around for months and months. You had to go into the store and get fresh meat. So, but then the refrigerator got better, the freezers got bigger, and people could store all kinds of things. Well, nothing wrong with storing meat in your freezer. But the typical American freezer today has, well, let's start out with breakfast food. It has frozen waffles, frozen pancakes, frozen some kind of sausage and muffin, whatever. There's all kinds of frozen breakfast foods. Then you get to the lunch foods. There's these patties that have bread on the outside and pepperoni and meat and cheeses on the inside. And then there's little pizzas, and then there's big pizzas. And there's all kinds of frozen, already processed food. You can even get a complete dinner with mashed potatoes, meatloaf, vegetables, and some applesauce with cinnamon and things like that stuck in there. All kinds of processed foods are being placed in freezers today. It's not just used just for the convenience of having meat that you purchased on Saturday, be able to be using it on Friday or Thursday of that same week. So before 1950, people bought fresh food, and that's what they cooked for their families. Fresh vegetables, fresh fruits, homemade breads. Now, I know nobody's going to be going out and making their own bread every day, but at least buying bread from a bakery that doesn't use BHT, BHA, preservatives, all kinds of chemicals in the bread so that the bread can stay on your shelf for at least 2 or 3 weeks. You want to buy bread that if you don't eat it in a day or two, it's going to be rock hard and then can only be ground up and used as breadcrumbs. So basically what I'm saying is a good typical diet is fresh meats, fresh fruits and vegetables, fresh bread. You want to stay away from as many processed foods as you can. Processed foods all have preservatives in them to keep them for a long time. Well, what's so bad about that? Well, if it keeps the food from rotting away, when you consume it, it's going to keep you from rotting away. Well, that sounds like it could be a good thing. No, it's not. You see, when a cell in your body is ready to die, it sends off signals that will tell other cells in the body, specifically white blood cells, to come and eat it up. When a cell dies, there are other cells that come and remove the body, take it away, get rid of it. If it's a red blood cell, maybe there's some parts you want to use in there, maybe a little bit of iron, something else. But the body gets rid of things that are dead, dying, or not functioning well. If you eat foods with preservatives, then your cells now have preservatives. And when the time comes for those cells to die, they're not going to rot away. It really confuses the body. The body's not really sure who it should take away and who it should not. So you want to eat foods that do not have a lot of preservatives in them. Prior to 1950 also, milk came delivered to you, whole milk came delivered to you by the milkman. I remember we used to have a metal box outside of our house. And when we went out in the morning, there was always 4 bottles of milk in a glass bottle. And if you looked at the bottle, there was the heavy cream on top, and the thinner milk was down at the bottom. So you always had to shake the bottle before you would pour a glass of milk. That's because milk was not homogenized back then. The milk was pretty much raw. There were some companies that would pasteurize the milk. Not everybody did. So it wasn't pasteurized, it wasn't homogenized. It was raw milk. And so you had large fat molecules, small fat molecules, and the body could choose what it wanted to absorb and what it didn't. Today's milk is all pasteurized, which means it's raised very slowly to a temperature of 120 degrees. Well, what does that do? That changes the calcium inside the milk from organic calcium, ionized calcium, the good calcium that your body can use, it changes it to inorganic calcium, no longer the kind of calcium that your body can use. That's what happens when you pasteurize. When you pasteurize, you also destroy a lot of the enzymes that are in the milk that allow your body to digest the milk and assimilate it. Milk is also homogenized, which means they spin it down at such a high speed that all of the fat molecules are the exact same size. Problem with that is that you absorb every single one of those fat molecules and not necessarily get to choose which ones you want and which ones you don't want. So milk is a totally different product today than it was prior to 1950. Now, having said all of that, I'm one of those people that's really of the belief that it's very strange for us to be drinking the milk of another animal. There's something very bizarre about that. Milk was intended to feed the newborn. So if a cow gives birth to a baby cow, a calf, that milk was intended for that calf, so that that calf would grow up to be either a bull or another cow. It wasn't intended for human consumption. We were not supposed to weigh 450 pounds, 500 pounds. We're not supposed to be that big. So our protein molecules are not that big. So when you take in the protein molecules in milk that's designed to make a big cow, you've got a problem. Your body has to break that down. We're the only creatures on the planet that drink the milk of another animal. Now, if you're going to drink milk, at least drink raw milk. Milk that has not been pasteurized, milk that has not been homogenized, and your body will have the knowledge and the ability to take what it needs and not consume all of it. So that's my little lecture on milk. Let's get on to meat. Meat, you should try to buy your meat as fresh as possible. Try to buy your meat that doesn't have pesticides, that doesn't have hormones in it. And I know today, in today's economy, that's going to be very difficult because it's going to be more expensive than buying your meat that's on sale for the week. But try to get as fresh meat as you can and meat that does not have hormones and pesticides in it. Same goes for your vegetables. Always try to pick organic wherever you can. Organic vegetables simply means that the farmer who raised the vegetables or fruit did not spray any pesticides for the last 3 years. That's all it means. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have any other chemicals. It doesn't mean that it comes from non-genetically modified seeds. It doesn't mean any of that. Organic just simply means that there are no pesticides sprayed on that piece of property for 3 years. Can there be other pesticides that may have sprayed in from the wind from a neighboring farm? Absolutely. But you still want to try to get organic wherever you can. There have been some recent studies that have shown that organic fruits and vegetables actually have 30% more nutrients in them than the non-organic. Can you get organic everything? Probably not. But I do try to buy organic first wherever I can, and then if there's something special that I want that's not organic, I go ahead and I buy it. You just try to do the best that you can. Again, you want to be able to eat as much fresh fruits and vegetables, fresh meat as you possibly can, and try to stay away from processed foods that are loaded with preservatives and chemicals. There are two sections in the grocery store that we probably have very, very little use for. One of them is the soda aisle, and the other one is the potato chips and chips aisle. These are what I call non-foods. Soda. What's so bad about soda? Well, soda usually has a very high sugar content. Your typical glass of Coca-Cola can have as much as 40 teaspoons of sugar in it. That's an awful lot of sugar, and that does a job on the phosphorus levels in your body. But even if you were to buy sugar-free soda, suppose you bought something like any of the diet sodas, that are supposedly sugar-free. Well, they have to be sweetened with something, so they're usually sweetened with either NutraSweet, which is an excitotoxin to the brain, or they're sweetened with saccharin, which is a carcinogenic, and they also all have a certain amount of phosphoric acid. That's how they get the carbonation, the CO2, to stay in the soda. Years ago, when you used to buy a bottle of soda, once you opened the soda, that soda would lose its carbonic acid very quickly, and you would lose the fuzz, you would lose the gases in it, and the soda would be flat. So they decided to put a little bit of phosphoric acid in the soda. That keeps the carbonation in the soda, so it doesn't get flat quite as fast as it used to. Well, phosphoric acid is a big problem for your body, and changes your body chemistry, and no matter what you do, you will get cavities. Now remember, if you get a cavity in your tooth, it's not just a cavity. Decay in the mouth is a systemic disease. If your teeth are melting away, so are other parts of your body. And so you need to stay away from the soda aisle in your grocery store. The other aisle is your chips and potato chips and pretzels and popcorn and all the other things that are not only have tons of calories and very little nutrients, but are also sprayed with all kinds of chemicals, pesticides, and preservatives. So those are two aisles that you really want to stay away from, unless it's a birthday party or New Year's Eve, some kind of celebration. I still can't imagine why you would want to celebrate by poisoning your body some more.